Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Patrick Tucker, Science and Technology Editor for Defense One, back to talk about the Army's cloud modernization efforts with Pushpapani Jayapal, Chief for the Cloud Enablement Division at the Enterprise Cloud Management Agency of the U.S. Army. Can I call you Pushpa?
Oh, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. So to start out, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do at the Cloud Enablement Division at the Enterprise Cloud Management Agency of the U.S. Army?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me here. Truly excited to be here. So, as you mentioned, Patrick, I lead the Cloud Enablement Division and ECMA Enterprise Cloud Management Agency within the CIO's office for the U.S. Army. So, my division, the whole purpose in my division, I have the pleasure of guiding Army customers through their cloud journey. So what we do is make sure, we get in the customers, make sure they have all their ducks in a row. They know who their AO is. They have a risk management plan. They have an architecture that fits really well within the Army's cloud, which is the Army's enterprise cloud. And then we move them through the process into an architecture review board, a change control board, and then eventually we onboard them into CArmy and take care of any other questions or needs that they may have. So that's the primary role of my division within ECMA.
Okay, and that's such an interesting and important role right now in terms of the Defense Department's entire efforts to move to a hybrid cloud infrastructure with an enterprise cloud core. The U.S. Army has such an interesting part of that because you've got lots and lots of users all over the world and on the ground. And you also have that added element of having to work perhaps more closely with partner militaries and partner data. And bringing that all into something that can be useful for the U.S. Army and for its partners and allies. And I think that's very much on display you watch the U.S. Army's efforts from Poland and Europe to support Ukraine. And we've heard a lot about how enterprise cloud helped Ukraine develop resiliency to continue with service for its military and really for its civilians by relying on enterprise cloud that was physically located outside of the country. And that's like sort of one story that's emerging from that. I wonder, can you talk a little bit about any lessons that you have learned just watching Ukraine and learning about their data and resiliency efforts that might be applicable to what the Army is doing, or that actually showcase previous best of practices that exist within the U.S. Army?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right in saying that our customers is the whole enterprise army, right? So we get our customers from CONUS and OCONUS, especially from Germany, USAPAC, and USARAF, and all over wherever we have our military bases. So one of the important things is a hybrid cloud infrastructure that we talked about, that there's a lot of focus within the Army's enterprise cloud to integrate our enterprise cloud with the tactical networks, right? So they have OCONUS installations, and tactical units or theaters are generally disconnected from the enterprise systems. So one of the important things that we learned from Ukraine and also from other areas where we are doing some quick exercises is that the tactical units need to be very tightly integrated with the enterprise systems. So and tactical units generally they have their own networks, and enterprise systems are generally disconnected from the tactical units. So one of the important initiatives that CArmy or ECMA is on with G357 and integrated with the Army data plan is to see how these tactical networks can integrate with the enterprise resources we have and the business resources we have, so we can provide the absolute high decision-making quality to our commanders to support these warfighting missions. Data-centric Army is a new theme and motto, and ECMA is also investing much in making sure we have the data interoperability between the systems inside the ecosystem, right? So not just hosting cloud solutions in the cloud space, but also creating that ecosystem where they can share data seamlessly. Like one of the initiatives is our API management platform that will help help systems transfer data with much ease and with much standardization.
Mm-hmm.
And the other initiative that we have is the Leap Tactical initiative that's going on, which is based on out of big data platform that DISA provides. And we have those things, big data platform deployed on the tactical edge, and also we're deploying those big data platforms into the enterprise system. So, and they are interconnected, and they're replicated and duplicated at regular intervals. So both tactical nodes and also the enterprise commanders and people in Pentagon have access to that information at the same time to make a real-time decision. So those are some of the very really exciting initiatives that are going on within ICMA. So warfighting and the tactical is a really challenging and interesting space to integrate into the cloud. Business and enterprise systems, they are well on their way because that's what industry does. But integrating tactical with enterprise is a very interesting and an interesting challenge that whole Army is undertaking right now.
Yeah, and let's dig into that challenge a little bit because, of course, if you read the National Defense Strategy, the National Security Strategy, and read that new focus on great state competition, the kind of core lesson to take away from that is that the United States must prepare to compete with adversaries that are pretty good at jamming, at hacking, and creating electromagnetic interference and disrupting the ability of those operators that are at the tip of the spear to get back in touch with enterprise cloud or even potentially with each other. But we also know, as you point out, that the secret to faster, more accurate operations in the future is getting more data quickly to where it needs to be. So can you talk a little bit about how you create a reliable and robust cloud access experience in those places in the dirt where you might be dealing with a contested environment, but where those soldiers still need the full bandwidth of data that might be available to them?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. So if you look at the Army Cloud Plan, it lays out a wider ecosystem, not just based on the regular internet. So while colorless transport is one of our key elements to that, and mounted and dismounted systems, how do we operate with when you have to shut off edge devices due to electromagnetic interference and they want to stop that, and once we are safe and back on, we need those information transferred seamlessly and immediately. And there is also a plan to integrate with satellite data systems, and there are plans to get pipelines, separate pipelines going, and also using the public internet, right? So we are no longer relied on just a single connection and one way of communicating with the headquarters or even within the systems. So colorless communication and zero trust is one of the main features that is going to support these activities, because we are now no longer reliant on a network like a zipper. We only fight in zippers. Still fighting happens in zipper, but I think the Army is moving towards widening that mindset, and zero trust will come in handy in helping this out. It's not where the data is located, it's who needs access to the data that determines the accessibility of the data. So in alignment with this, there are a lot of activities going on within ECMA and in Army as wider with respect to zero trust. Thunderdome pilot that DISA is carrying out. We are doing a similar thing within the Army with the SASE access endpoints and software-defined wide area networks, which can segment network pieces as needed, and provide that interoperability, right? So when you have a software-defined networking, we will be able to micro-segment networks on an as-needed basis and provide connectivity where it's just needed. And once we are safe back to connect back, then other networks and connection mechanisms kick in, and we should be able to communicate the information. So that is just the transport portion of it. And once the transport is done and we get the data that we need in the right location, then we need processing power to process the data and make meaning out of it, right? So it's not just just transfer. What meaning do we get out of that data is something like all mission areas are focusing on, and CRME and ICMA is an enabler to that mission, right? So we have smart people all over Army doing great things, but CRME will be an enabler to all those things, where we provide an ecosystem where people can connect and communicate and provide a safe space for that.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question?
No, that's great. And you can see how the movement to zero trust actually enables new communication solutions that I think a lot of people had never thought about. When you move away from device specific, like endpoint specific security, then that frees you up to possibly use the open internet for data, because you're not necessarily looking at the same place as the security flaw. You're looking at the user level, and so that gives you more options, which were going to be more useful in a place where you have a built-out telecommunications environment, but where you also have there's no endpoint that should be considered absolutely safe. So I think that's really fascinating. One of the areas where the U.S. Army in particular is testing out all of these things is in Project Convergence, which is, of course, the U.S. Army's experimentation effort to create a joint all-domain command and control reality, kind of very key to exercising all of the different elements that the U.S. Military has across services, across domains, and even bringing in partners in order to affect a deterrent and deter a great state adversary. And the Army's role in that Project Convergence is kind of a spear tip for really the rest of the services. And that means kind of a lot of data burden and a lot of expectation riding on the network that provides the backbone for Project Convergence. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing there to help that experimentation to work and to bring it to its next level?
Sure thing. So let me start up with an example that happens and that is happening in CRME in Germany. Germany just conducted a small experiment called Griffin Shark that is generally to enable the Fifth Corps and the NATO's multinational corps combined operation to get them ready to get them battle ready, to get them be ready for deterrence activities that are proposed by NATO. So Second Cavalry Regiment was able to get into CRME in a very short time frame, less than a month to a month and a half, to go fully into production. And they were able to leverage the latest PaaS and SaaS solutions that are available in the cloud and provide real-time command and control to the whole unit that was deployed. And also real-time language transition services to the soldiers. There were more than like 300 soldiers that participated in this in the exercise. And as you say, it is joint command, multinational force that is participating in this experiment, and enabling those kind of services in those areas and providing the edge capabilities that the soldiers need is a great example of how our commanders are thinking, how CRME is enabling that kind of activity, because we already have an accredited environment where they can start experimenting these kind of exercises. So it was a multinational operation, like I said, and also mission partner environments. That is what they used to communicate. Multiple nations, our allies used to communicate in mission partner environments. So bringing that kind of environment edge into CRME to be able to transfer data and the transport layer, right? So those are the two important things. So there are a lot of experiments going on like that. That is just one of the experiments I would say that is happening in Europe. So so enabling that, and that is just one use case. One other use case I would point out is ECMA's partnership with POC3T, Program Executing Office Command and Control Tactical Network. So they work using regional hub nodes, and what the new experiment that we're trying to do, which was pioneered by 18th Airborne Corps, is to have a landing zone within CRME for all these tactical networks, and then integrate their Active Directory structure into the enterprise structure. So anything that have the access control will not be a problem from tactical into an enterprise into the, when they jump into the enterprise solutions, right? So seamless handshake there, seamless integration between what's happening at the edge versus what is happening in the enterprise is another great example that I would say that's in works. And once that happens, all tactical programs in that area can onboard into the regional hub nodes, and they'll be seamlessly connected into the wide area enterprise systems. They don't have to go through a separate ATO process. It's all covered under the tactical ATO that we already have, and CRMA already has ATO. So the speed and resiliency is what something we are focusing on big time, and in the future war is on who gets the information first and who gets the information fast and makes informed decisions, right? So the speed to production and the speed to implementation is something that ICMA and CRMA are very focused on and encouraging these kind of experiments.
Yeah, and you can really see that when you look at the Europe case, where I think it's sort of not well understood or appreciated perhaps by the public, the enormous role that the U.S. military and partner militaries play in supporting Ukraine and making sure that there are fresh supplies that are literally coming out of all these different countries constantly in real time, being put on planes and trains and trucks, moving to the front, and organizing all of that in a way that lets the Ukrainian military know exactly where they can put forces, where they can maneuver. It's actually this enormous seamless operation. It's not seamless, but it's incredibly complex, and it works pretty well at this point, in large part because of efforts like these to pull all of this data together in some way that gives everybody at their various points clarity into what's actually happening. And it's very much real-time data. I don't think folks appreciate that. But
it's a humongous work that goes on in the back end to make this all look seamless, right? And also and also the fact that our soldiers' lives are dependent on this adds a tremendous amount of pressure and responsibility to the military that is pulling these activities, and it gives me immense pleasure to know that we're supporting something like that in the back end. It's very fulfilling.
Yeah. But of course, the Army has decided to do something even harder now, which is create mission partner environments in the Indo-PACOM AOR, which is also something the Army has a big role in. So in Europe, where you have NATO allies that have some level of interoperability around a lot of their different systems, now the Army wants to create, with the broader Indo-PACOM, wants to create that same sort of network data center hub where different allies and partners can share data and operate together for exercises. And these are partners that traditionally haven't really worked together, unlike a lot of NATO members. They don't really exercise together, but we know that they're beginning to ask to do that a lot more. They want to exercise more with the US military and more with each other, because only as a unified front can they feel secure that they have some sort of posture that's going to be responsive to China. But that implies getting data from places that have never shared data with outside of their country. So can you talk a little bit about Indo-PACOM and the mission partner environment that you're looking to create there, and how the challenges there are maybe a little bit different from Europe?
Absolutely. So in Pacific and also in Germany and in USRF, there are a lot of engagements that is going on right now, trying to create this OCONUS hybrid cloud structure. So hybrid cloud is the answer for a lot of things that when it comes to warfighting and tactical, right? So we are in talks with Pacific and also with Germany about setting up OCONUS AWS Outposts or Azure stacks out there that can be movable modular data centers, not data centers that are just sitting in one place and takes a huge time to set up and operate, but modular data centers and snowballs and edge devices like that which the soldiers can and take wherever they want, set it up, and connect it to the network, right? So it also demands a lot of thought process and architecture into how the mission partner environments, like you said, will seamlessly play with our network. We don't want to open up our zipper or our network to the mission partners either. So it's a safe space where these two networks combine together to share data. And also there are talks about, not everybody has a mission partner environment. Not all our allies have access to our mission partner environment, or do they have one? So we need to talk about safely letting them into our space, and how do we go about creating that secluded network architecture where we interact and then dissolve the network, right? So we don't want to keep that going all the time. So software defined networking, wide area networks is one of the key factors there. And like I said before, zero trust plays a big role. So those architectures are all coming together. Though there are pockets of interactions happening, there are a lot of testings going on what works better, what doesn't work better. So once we have a lot of pilots going on, I should say. So once we get a pilot going to a level where we are very comfortable, then that will be kind of rolled out. So in Pacific, we've been testing this out. Actually, I should say the Army Data Plan Group, along with ICMA, been testing out the Leap Tactical data analytics platform that I was talking about a little earlier as well. And then we are trying to kind of that experiment went on really well. So we're trying to get that and try to roll it out into UserAF and Indo-PACOM, in Indo-PACOM area. And there are certain other experiments that have gone really well with the UserAF that we are trying to roll out into the Pacific, right? So multiple efforts going on. Hybrid cloud again is the answer, and modular data centers, and also making a real good use of the regional hub nodes that we have already established in the Okona sites, and integrating that seamlessly into the Army and the wider ecosystem is something that's going on as we speak, and very, very intriguing actually.
Right, right. And of course, the more partners you bring in, obviously, the richer your data, the more responsive you can be, the more unified your response, but also the greater the diplomatic challenge to make sure that all of your data is standardized to some standard. And that's a diplomatic challenge that I think a lot of people don't appreciate as being something that's tied to human beings conversing with one another about whether or not one should do or redo a lot of work that might exist there as an incumbent system, and then everyone has to agree on something that everyone can share. So when you look at that question of data standardization, particularly bringing in partner militaries, how do you approach that challenge, and how big is it right now?
It is quite big, to be honest with you, and that's where the Army Data Plan is coming into picture, sending some guidelines as to how the data standards need to be set and shared. Of course, we know that in Europe, the data standards are totally different from what we operate. We're used to be operating in the United States, so there needs to be above my pay grade discussions happening at political level as to military operations are different from civilian operations, right? So standardizing data is a big deal, and pockets of standardizations have been happening from what I can see, but standardization at the whole Army level and across all mission partner environments is something a big leap that we need to take, but I can see that efforts are happening in baby steps, and we are getting really, really close.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think folks appreciate that this is a whole nother sort of burden that the U.S. has put on itself, because it's sort of necessary if you want to work with allies and partners. But just the gap between how effective the Ukrainian military, for its small size, is able to operate against the Russian military, which doesn't have to worry about data standardization across its allies because it doesn't have any. I mean, frankly.
Yeah.
Lets you know that the extra work is definitely worth it, not just for the sake of PR, but because it really does result in faster maneuverability, more accurate operations. The last thing I would ask you on, one of the things that the U.S. military, their goal with setting up a lot of these architectures and making sure that you have specific places where a variety of different data can come together under a usable standard and then go out is to support future artificial intelligence and machine learning endeavors, which is also key to faster and more accurate operations. So understanding that the Defense Department is very nascent in these efforts, and they're still figuring out for themselves a lot of what it's going to look like and who has the data assets and how all of that will be curated and stewarded. Can you share with us a little bit how you're approaching that problem of setting up a space where AI applications can really run on the data that's coming into both these mesh networks at the tactical edge, at the enterprise level, and how you see this great technology that's supposed to redefine the 21st century playing a role in that in the near future?
Yeah, AI and ML, as old as it is, it's very new as well, right? So intelligence communities have been operating on machine learning and artificial intelligence for over a decade now. And because it was confined and just in that area, I think there was not a lot of issues, but trying to roll that out to a wider military community and to the whole army in general for day-to-day operations and things like that is something that is nuanced. And I know our CIO is putting out policy guidance on how do we operate in this space and what are the fundamental things that we need to set up initially to enable AI and ML. So AI and ML are happening in pockets again, even within IGMA, where we are trying to automate a lot of our processes, trying to reduce human touch when inside my division, trying to get folks into the cloud. So there are a lot of analytics going on in that area, and we are trying to see the trends and automate things inside our own division. So what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of pockets, and even on all these operations that we talked about, there is a touch of machine learning happening. There's a touch of artificial intelligence happening, but to kind of roll it out as a service, to roll it out as a governance framework across military, we do have some work to do in that area in lieu of some of policies that needs to be put out, because AI is, as we all know, it can get out of hand really, really quick, depending on what information we are feeding it and how we are teaching it, right? So who's teaching what and also some guardrails. You can't go beyond this. You can't go beyond that. We don't have a lot of clarity into that, but that doesn't mean we can't get there, because military has the knowledge because they've been using it for a long time. And but again, it's a little bit to go before we can have all those things nailed down and enable that as a service.
Yeah. And I think that the Army's approaches to these questions and how to go about them is so interesting. Because even at the 82nd Airborne level, on the operator level, there's now a course for data literacy for operators, for like the guys that jump out of the planes, they're now taking courses in data literacy, because I think there's a recognition there that this is going to redefine a lot of what they do, that the very act of soldiering has changed fundamentally because of information technology in the 21st century. And so you have to enable people that are the people using this technology to understand it on a much more intimate level, and not just as a person pulling rabbits out of a hat and don't know where it comes from. So I think that's absolutely fascinating, and also again speaks to the contrast between the U.S. military and that idea of the hyper-enabled person, the soldier, and the non-commissioned officer versus a top-down military construct that doesn't work as well. So I guess, yes, in the final question, the next year for you, what is the most important thing that you're looking forward to accomplishing?
So I mean, I'm chief of cloud enablement division. So enabling much faster much faster and secure access to the cloud or the CRM ecosystem that we are setting up is at the forefront of my vision, making sure we educate the Army customers that are coming in with respect to, again, data standards, cloud standards, and operating standards. What are the guardrails we have? Educating them so they can be more enabled when they get into the cloud. They know what to do, how to do things like that. And the other interesting fact that I'm looking forward to is all this Oconus cloud architecture and along with the Army data group. How are we going to complete this architecture handshake between transport and data, and see how all these tactical networks and how all the tactical programs get integrated into CRME and the wider ecosystem. So great year ahead, and I just can't wait to see what's up for it.
All right. Well, Pushpa, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned a lot about what the future of the Army is going to look at, what the future, in many ways, militaries are going to look like through your efforts. And it's a wonderful window. So thank you for joining us. To our audience, stay tuned, because after a short presentation from our underwriter, I'll return to talk with the Marines about some of their cloud efforts. So Pushpa, thank you again.
Thanks for having me.